Starting the stream. Here we go. Here we go. Is it working? Yes, it's working. Yay! Should be working. There we go. Here we go. Yes, there I am. Woohoo! Yay! Okay. Good stuff. All right. Hey, Ice High Wind. Wow, you were speedy getting in here. First. So we'll just wait for a few more people. Oh, wow. People. Lots of people. Oh, hello. Hello. Hello, all. Hi, how are you? Yeah, my throat is raunched today. I blew it out. Part of it was true story, yelling over tank explosions. I spent the weekend at Tank Day out in Oshawa, and it was very loud. I talked about this on the Rich and Red podcast that's coming up this week as well. Being around actual tanks sorry, is nothing like a video game. It is very loud and very forceful. The concussive blasts that hit your chest, the first 3 or 4, I'm actually still a bit sore, but the first 3 or 4 takes some getting used to. It actually makes you feel kind of nauseous. And then you sort of acclimate, and then it's okay. But yeah, it was very, very loud. And so my my voice is pretty runched out. But it was cool. They did a World War II demonstration in the morning. Then they had a thank you that you love the show drawing, the White Phoenix. The highlight for me, just for completely selfish reasons, was the event was sponsored by World of Tanks, you know, the free-to-play game. Well, they did a thing. They did a competition where the 2 winners of the World of Tanks tournament got to get in these 2 Leopard tanks, and a professional drove them, but they got to work the big ass cannon. They got to be the gunner on this tank. And the High Kroganchar, it really did show, like, these are the best players that showed up, and you could tell they did a thing at the beginning. How many people have played World of Tanks? Hello, Amazing Patches. And a bunch of us in the one section that I was in raised our hands, and I turned around, like, the only Asian guys there. There was a group of like 30 Asian guys behind me, and they were all the World of Tanks players, and then they got in these tanks, and oh man, it was not at all. They did like 3 rounds, and they got 2 shots a round, and there was very little actually hitting of targets. Oh, Booze and Hot Pockets, that's so good right now. Patches. Yeah, so that's what happened over the weekend. But man, they didn't really warn the crowd when they were going to test fire, and the first one was just boom. And every time there was a break between demonstrations, you saw people leave because it's just too hard on the body. Like, you must have to assimilate. Sorry to hear that, Demon Dragon Master. That sucks. But that's what I'm explaining is about what happened to my voice, guys. So I was at a tank demonstration over the weekend and yelling over the explosions and firing of AK-47 shooting blanks and all these assault class rifles was quite loud. And yeah, Tomas, it absolutely does give appreciation for what people in the military have to deal with. And it explains why my stepdad is deaf. He was artillery in Korea. He actually talked about they have it doesn't run. It's just a display. The old Centurion tank that he was in Korea, and he took me around to show that this is the thing about old war guys. They never talk about it. They never talk about it, and then something like triggers something, and they start telling a story. Um, and so he goes up to the tank and he kind of pats it like an old friend. And he starts talking about how when they were in Korea, it was fairly hilly terrain, and you couldn't put this tank sideways on on an incline. You know that thing we all do on any game with a tank or a car or anything like that, like Saints Row or Grand Theft Auto or anything like that. You bank it, right? You just go up on the bank. It's like, and you can't do that with an old Centurion tank. And he explained the Scorpions, the tanks that the Canadian forces had in Korea, had V-shaped treads. So they could go sideways along hills. The British had the Centurion tanks, which had straight treads. And so when you went sideways on a hill, it was just like skis. It just slid. And so it was a very funny story. But then, they showed they did the Vietnam demonstration, which was not especially well acted by the volunteers they had playing the Vietnamese. You saw this one guy, he was just shooting, and he just kind of looked around, and he's like, well, am I supposed to die? And he just fell down, and I'm sitting here, I felt like yelling, Farb! But, oh, that was the really funny thing. It took so long for the World of Tanks thing to get going that I started getting stupid, and I started choking around to my husband. I said, I just feel the urge. This is taking so long. Everyone's just waiting. I feel the urge to yell Leroy Jenkins. And we waited another 20 minutes while the tanks were moving, like the cannons on these tanks were moving. And they were moving kind of like Shepherd danced, just sort of like this. And I all of a sudden I just kind of went, Leroy Chickens, and they started shooting at each other, and it was the best accident. The Yosei caught me saying Farb. You guys know what Farb is? What you call newbies in the Civil War reenactors? They called Farbs. Farbing. Yeah. But yeah, so they did that, and then they did the Vietnam thing, and they did little parades of and of course the fumes, like the exhaust is probably diesel, but even that like burns your throat. And then I'm pretty sure I was wearing sunblock on top of sunblock. I wore makeup with sunscreen, which I do on a regular basis, SPF 20. But then I have SPF 65 upstairs, and it literally comes in an aerosol can, and I just douse myself in it before I leave the house. And you see the extra freckles? You see the extra ginger, like, development? Look, like, I got burned through SPF, cumulative SPF 85. And yeah, so there was a lot of stuff, and oh wow, it was jet fuel I was breathing in. It's pretty kind of nasty. Yes, I have stolen more souls, more freckles, but yeah, it's pretty nasty. Oh, okay, Vienna, because that makes sense why my eyes are messed up too, because my eyes have been driving me crazy. Yeah, I need a parasol. I'm gonna go around like a parasol at Tank Day. Half the people there were bikers. I don't know why, but it was really funny because my mother's kind of clued out about things involving life that happened after about 1980. And so she's looking at all the biker insignia and going, what does 21 in a spade mean? I'm like, don't worry about it, Mom. Not relevant to your life. But yeah, and then they did the big reason to go on opening day to the Oshawa Tank Museum. Um, Sharp and Pointless says hillbilly laryngitis is what it's called where they're from. It's being hoarse from breathing and burning gunpowder. That is funny. Hillbilly laryngitis. There we go. But yeah, the last thing that the big reason to go when we did, except instead of the it's one Saturday a month all throughout the summer, and it's basically just raising money to refurbish more tanks with this historical society. And so this very rich guy collected and restored a bunch of Persian Gulf War vehicles. And so for this this day, they reunited the British. They were mainly British servicemen and women with the vehicles they used during the Gulf War in the 90s. And it was interesting because it was all a mix of, there was some, they had one Russian era tank to kind of play the other side in the little reenactment, because that's apparently what the other side, the Iraqis were using, and that thing was giant. It was just a big old slab. And then they had the predominantly British vehicles, and they were interesting because they showed the different the different iterations of certain armored personnel carriers and things like that. How the first iteration didn't have a turret on it, then they put a turret on it, and then they put some other things on it. And yeah, it was cool, but the experience of being there and only being like 25 feet away where these things are shooting at each other, and they weren't even live shells, they were radio controlled. So if they hit a particular pack on the ground, it would go like smoke. So you only had the blast from the firing, you didn't have the impact. And it was crazy how loud, like the force coming out of these cannons. Sometimes, depending on the angle, you'd hear it in the distance before it hit you. Like, it was that you really get a respect for these machines. And it's interesting, like when you talk about realism in gaming and all this stuff, you really do recognize the games can only do so much. At the end of the day, games are games. Games are entertainment products. They're not they can only simulate so much what it's like to be in war. And so this is something we have to keep in mind when we discuss the influence of games and what we can expect games to do, and what kind of responsibility we put on games. I think games can do a good job humanizing people in the military, but in terms of actually giving people a sense of what it's like, I think it's a little overvalued. I remember with Spec Ops: The Line, everybody told me it was such a great depiction of PTSD, and it's actually not. Most people with PTSD don't have outright dissociative hallucinations. It was a good game. It was very dramatic. I thought it told a good story, but we really have to be careful thinking we know what something's like because of a work of fiction. And yeah, I mean, the other thing that was interesting is when they actually did the battle mock-ups, um, it's funny because the actual style of combat was what the first few Gears of War were criticized for in terms of gameplay being too slow. You know, they hunker down, they get behind cover, and they trade fire rounds. They're not running back and forth out in the open, moving like it's not a run and gun. You get somewhere safe and you keep shooting until it's not safe anymore. Um, and so um, it is interesting. And Oron in the chat said, "Yeah, no, in the real life, no, that shotgun doesn't deal 40 points of damage. It just obliterates you." Shotguns are one of those weapons that um the in some games I'm okay with it. Um because in something like Halo or Gears of War, they're wearing like this futuristic armor that for all we know has some kind of force field around it that absorbs um gunfire and all that stuff. Um But in a game like Uncharted, for instance, it is kind of unrealistic how many, hits Nathan Drake can take only wearing a t-shirt and jeans. And for most people, so what? It's a game. It's fun. We don't care because he's also fighting like blue mountain monsters in one part and these weird zombie shit. What's wrong with the audio, guys? People are saying it's audio, but I don't think it is. I think it's just my voice. Is it too quiet? I can try to turn it up. Let me do that and see if that's better. I have to turn it down for my VO. There's maybe I can there. Maybe that's better so there aren't two audio sources coming in. See, listen, got some levels. Can try to turn it up some. Is that any better? Popping? Yeah, my voice does sound different. That's not an audio problem. The audio pops. That's interesting. Because I think I'd feel if my earphone was shocking my ears. Oh, okay. It was just the level was too low. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. One problem was my webcam microphone was still on. So that might have explained it. I'll try to move the angle of the microphone to see if that helps the popping. But clipping doesn't make any sense. But yeah, starts and cuts every other second. That's weird. That might be YouTube. Let me stop my monitor of the stream. Maybe it's dropping frames. But yeah, so that's why my voice is shot, because I was yelling over tanks over the weekend. It's unless something got damaged on my headsets, which would suck because they're not that old. But okay, yeah, I think the clipping is the connection. The popping might be because I'm pushing more to get the same volume, and so there's a lot more air hitting much like the tanks hitting my chest. There's a lot more air. It was interesting. I probably would have bailed if I didn't see it as an educational experience, because it did hurt. Like those first few hits, like those first few blasts, it was like, oh, This isn't fun. This isn't exciting. It's an electronic popping. Oh, that sucks. Okay. But it's interesting because the last thing like this I kind of went to with live gunfire. What else can I close? Oh, shut down Twitter. That might be causing packet loss. There we go. And I am short of breath too. Otaku cat. But yeah. So, uh, yeah. The last thing I was at that was like this was the reenactment um, of the OK Corral at um, down at the OK Corral down in Tombstone, and it was it was interesting because when those guns started firing, there was this thrill in the audience. They kind of went ooh, and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I'd never had anything to compare it to. But then seeing a Canadian audience react to gunfire, um, compared to how American audiences reacted to gunfire, it was a very different response. Americans were, ooh, whereas Canadians are like, are we supposed to run away now? This is scary. Um, the name says tank fire is more fun inside the tank when all of the snacks fall out of the racks and your soft drinks get shaken up. Um, Guys, I can't do anything about my voice. It is not an audio problem. It is my voice. Wow. This is going to be a fun stream. This is the last live stream of the Lady Bits campaign. I am gonna have to, today's what? Today's Wednesday? Yeah, today's Wednesday. Um, I'll try to, do something on Friday as a feedback thing, maybe a recap or something like that. Then I mean, I am gonna have to rest my voice. This is not good to be talking through this, but I did promise to do one last web stream, and we've also got storms coming in and out of the area. Um, it's been a real pain. I've been afraid I'm gonna lose connection or lose power the last few days. It's nice and sunny now, but it's one of those things that it'll um um uh okay, if people keep complaining about the sound, I am gonna end this stream because I can't talk about anything if people keep it's it sounds okay on my end. I can't do anything about the YouTube connection or anything like that. If it's that bad that it's distracting, I have to stop. So, can I get a consensus here about whether it's decent or not? Um, um, will you keep your Feedback Friday's live stream or go back to pre-recording? The thing about Feedback Friday live is that I try to do them once a month. It doesn't, okay, we're gonna keep going. Um, um, the, um, the purpose of Feedback Friday is to respond to comments throughout the week. And the great thing about live streams is that they're unpredictable. I don't know what people are going to ask. I love this. Um, so I like trying to do them once a month. The problem I was having before was that I do the technical production on Live from Canada, at the Sock Live that was from the Hard Rock Cafe. We're looking for a new location. And that was such a clusterfuck every week of uncontrollable variables that I was working till like 1, 2 in the morning. So getting up and doing a live thing when, I didn't get to sleep till 4 or 5 o'clock because I live an hour away from downtown Toronto. So you get finished at 1, 2 in the morning, you don't get home till 3, not asleep till 4. So that was that was the problem with regularly doing live streams. I like doing these live streams. I think you guys are great. I think you add a lot to the content. And hopefully the next location will be more controllable. The problem we were having with it was we had to set up and tear down every single week, and so we're using a computer that sits there dormant for the rest of the week, and so there's no opportunity to properly update drivers. The machine can try to be background loading, while we're trying to stream all these variables, and every time you like unplug something and plug something, you risk something not totally being right. So, I mean, again, we did that thing from Hooters and we tried to plug in our audio board, and once again, it wouldn't read as the audio board. It wouldn't read as a line in. It would read through the microphone jack. For reasons I don't understand, but whatever, we could get it working. And, that's just the reality. And so I didn't do, the live stuff as much as I wanted to. So it is nice to pick up games that are suited to play during live streams. I am working on getting a system configuration that works. I tried dual purposing my main monitor, and it threw off the default settings in Windows. So every time I went to play a game, it made my main monitor on my PC my shitty side screen. So, and then my TV broke. My TV broke, and that's when I tried to use this for gaming, and I've got my TV fixed now, but I've got to figure out a configuration for those live streams, and hopefully I can use LadyBits as an excuse to do that, because I am going to have to do a lot of game capture for that. That's probably going to be my, my July. My plan is to do the, feedback sessions for the various episodes throughout July and August, but we're gonna start with the first 6 and do sessions. Every session is going to be devoted to a specific episode, and so there's going to be a survey going out once the Kickstarter closes for the people who are in those feedback session groups. And it's going to be, what are your top 3 episodes you want to be involved in, giving feedback to, and then what times are the most convenient, time of day are the most convenient. Because I'll try to match as much as I can people's availability to the episodes they're most interested in. And now that we've got 12 full episodes, there's a lot of choice for people. And I'm also the survey is going to be you can give a paragraph of your thoughts right off the bat. So even if you miss the live stream, if you feel really passionately about a particular topic, at least you'd be able to put your thoughts in writing. And yes, today is the last day for the Kickstarter, Viendicus. Helen asks, are the episodes going to be released as they are done or saved up for a weekly release schedule later in the year? What I like to do is bank a certain number of episodes. So I want to have 3 done by mid to late September so that we can launch and then release everyone. I'm aiming for every 3 weeks. I may release earlier for backers, release the download versions first to give a bit of a perk. We'll see. But I like to be ahead because I like to be able to take a little extra time as it's required. But still deliver on a schedule. I have a TV background, right? I used to do live television, so schedules they've been trained into me, because the problem with not sticking to a schedule is not only do people get pissed off at you, but you run out of money. if you've scheduled, oh, it's going to take me this long, so I've got budget to pay people for this long, and then you go longer, you don't get more money, you know? And for people who are like, some Kickstarter projects won't be named, people like, where'd all that money go? Well, it went into taking too long to complete your project, because the longer you take, the more it costs you. And so that's why it's been interesting. People are so suspicious that the deliverables will not happen because of what's happened with other stuff. It's like, all I can do is do it, and so it's going to work. Somebody else asked, where will they be delivered? The 720 YouTube version will be on YouTube. The downloadable stuff, if it's just 1080p, I can just set it up somewhere. The nice thing about services like Google Play, iTunes, that kind of stuff, is they support 4K. So I could put those up on those services, and just, you know, people can distribute them that way for backers. I have to figure out how that was done, but I know people who talk about that. And a lot of people are also going to be getting the DVD versions, which it might actually be quite a few DVDs if it's in 4K, because those are big files. I did manage to upgrade the video card on this machine so that 4K. And yes, Cabrick, the next stretch goal is 31.5K, not 31K, and that is because of the exact price of the camera with tax in Canada. And it was interesting. Somebody asked me earlier. Oh, never mind. I'll just take questions in the chat. You don't need to hear me ramble. Lysios, what was your edition you play for D&D? I straddled 2nd edition AD&D and 3rd ed. Because I've been playing so long. I tried 4th. And 4th is good for quick games. Quick setup, quick execution. But, and it may have expanded since I tried it, but it really did, I found it limited. 3rd was amazing. You can do tons of stuff with it, but it takes a really long time to get going. The last grand tournament with core rules I sat in on at a gaming convention, we'd gone 45 minutes and only played 2 rounds. 2nd ed, I know some people like, oh, 3rd is way better, and 3rd allowed you to do a lot more, but 2nd ed, in terms of simplicity, speed, and adaptability, to me is still the best. The thing about games, and that book I plugged the other day, I still have it here, Rise of the Dungeon Master. They actually talk into, our joke with my gaming group was always, core rules? What core rules? Who plays core rules? And that was the awkward thing about doing a grand tournament, is it's back to core rules because they have to be standardized, and it's pre-rolled characters and all that stuff. And it was like, core rules are weird. Like the whole reason to continue to play tabletop games in the age of video game RPGs is because you can adapt the game to what you like and what makes sense to you. When I played Vampire, we adapted the shit out of the White Wolf rules because of various reasons and to make it easier for new players and things like that. I'd played Dungeons and Dragons things where we because we knew each other so well and we're so used to role playing and we're willing to fail sometimes, we streamline the dice rolls. The primary benefit of the books and the tabletop and the whole thing was if you don't like something, you change it. Oh, you bought Far Cry and Batman? That's cool, Patches. I mean, Batman Arkham Asylum is so accessible just because it's so Batman. I still like Arkham Asylum better than Arkham City, and I know people are like, oh, why did you say that? Arkham City. And to me, Arkham City is that silly putty effect. It's got this game around the edges and a big ol' thin middle, and it's just all stretched out, because to me, the whole purpose of Arkham City was to create something that was more DLC pack friendly, and it didn't have as much Hamill Joker. And he was so damn good. Mark Hamill's a Joker in Arkham Asylum. Not only was it one of the best video game performances I've ever seen, it was, I think, better than his voice work on Batman the Animated Series. Like, I think he actually outdid himself in that game. He was astounding. And it's rare that an actor, a film actor, a traditional Hollywood actor, can jump to video games and be that good, that fast. Hamill is such an intense talent. And I admit I'm biased, because back in the old days, we got to interview him in his house, and he has all the cells for the different voice work characters he's done, and he can sit there with them like on his lap, and he just drops them one after the other, and he switches between voices every single one, and it's letter perfect. He's that good. Hamill is that good a voice actor. Like, to me, if you got like if you did like a mocapped animation game or movie, and it was just Jennifer Hale, Mark Hamill, and Andy Serkis, that might be the closest thing to a perfect piece of entertainment that exists on this mortal coil. I mean, I would be all over that. That's one of the things I love about games becoming a bigger thing, is that kind of talent is getting a lot more credit now. Voice work is hard. Oh man, I gotta find the Mark Hamill, and let me see if I can find it, because we asked him about Dave Prowse farting in the Darth Vader suit, and he was so cool about it. This was right when episode 1 was coming out. Wow, it doesn't even search. That's bizarre. I'll try to look for it. We've got it somewhere. It's somewhere on the internet. But he's such a cool guy. Just the nicest guy in the world, but super, super smart too. And then somebody asked me a Dragon Age question. Here we are. Oh, it's more a question for the chat. I love when people are honest about the reason they're buying games. People crap on Dragon Age 2. I bought it because Hawk is cute and I want to make him gay. Am I going to be disappointed? Is it that bad? No, if that's what you want to do. I think that some of the relationship stuff in Dragon Age 2 is actually pretty good. The thing about Dragon Age 2, people were really rough on that game because it wasn't Dragon Age Origins. And I think it would have been better if EA wanted a game. Dragon Age 2 should not have been a number game. People would have been much better with it if it was, like the Blood Dragon to Far Cry 3. I think people would have been okay with that. It did not have the scope of Dragon Age 1, of Origins, because they didn't have the time. And so they made the best game they could with time they have. And I thought it was a pretty good game. I mean, the back and forth with the Era Shock was amazing in Dragon Age 2. I thought that was awesome. BioWare has never been the best for dungeon maps, which is a bit odd considering their background. But do you remember the original Mass Effect where every side dungeon you went into, it was the exact same footprint? And that was just because they needed more space on the Xbox 360 disc to put in all that dialogue stuff. So if you go into Dragon Age 2 expecting it to be more of a walking novel with fighting, and it's more based on the relationships and the story and all that stuff, if you don't expect the combat to be all that, I think you're really gonna like it. My sort of description in Dragon Age Origins, it's a very idealistic, very romantic story. And so everybody is right in some way in your party. In Dragon Age 2, it makes a nice little companion piece because you're not playing the hero of Ferelden, you're playing the champion of Kirkwall, and hero and champion, and this is the amazing thing about David Gator's writing. The way he describes the hero is very important. You're playing a champion in 2. You're not playing a hero. And so that altruism and kind of save the world element isn't required. You just have to do this really wowza stuff. And so that's really cool. I still don't think BioWare is really great with combat. They've never been. They were great with the turn-based stuff. When they tried to go to quasi real time, it's not games you play for combat. And they could have made it better, but they chose Skyrim as... Here's the thing about BioWare. They copy shit. Everything they do is copied in some way. Why is Oghren the Berserker dwarf? Because they like Wolverine. Why did Sten like cookies? Because it's a riff on the Martian Manhunter, right? They borrow ideas and shove them into games in new and different ways. There's so much Game of Thrones in Dragon Age Origins, like the whole Ser Sirah thing, that's straight up from Game of Thrones. And that was okay back in the day because they didn't think that, Game of Thrones was going to be a thing on TV. And even in Mass Effect, it's Star Wars meets Babylon 5 meets Dune meets, a whole bunch of other sci-fi it's pastiche. And they're really good at characters, and they're really good at sort of creating these amalgam worlds that allow the player to make meaningful choices. That's what they're good at. They are good at, much like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, you take this structure to tell your own story. They are very good at branching narrative choice. And if it's a money thing, if it's a voice work thing, I don't know why they don't experiment with a team that does just story-based episodic games. Why they have this conceit that they need to make all these pretty spaceships and planets. They don't really know their audience. And they started losing creative people. I mean, Gator's at Beamdog now, who has the Baldur's Gate license. And there's a bunch of other, some old Black Isle people are at Obsidian and all that stuff. And that's the reason that, Fallout New Vegas was fun. Okay, 3 whole dungeons. You're right, Landon. But, and there was still a little bit of that interesting, world in Inquisition, but it was so buried, it was so spread out in just big for the sake of big. Like, God, it took too long to get out of the hinterlands. The pacing of Inquisition was strange, and apparently that's because Dragon Age 2 bunged up their pacing of stories so badly that, like, they only got to do part of Hawk's story. Hawk's story ends in Inquisition. And, I mean, it takes so long for the game to really open up. I'm like, why did you decide it was a good idea to have new players spend 10 hours on one map, you know, before you hit Skyhold and the game actually opens up? That was so strange. And then, you know, Andromeda was kind of the same way. It's strangely bloated and slow. And it's almost, I won't say arrogance, because I first thought this is a very arrogant game. This is a very entitled game. But then underneath, you see this sort of insecurity in the game. And the two things tend to be connected, but instead of really getting better and better and better at what they're good at, BioWare is trying to be all things to all people. Oh, this is really, Toxkill, that it was just a mention on Facebook. It wasn't a complete article. Yeah, I'll leave that there. But, you know, no game can be all things to all people. And fans of the series, fans of a series, oh really? It was a staff pick? That's cool. Yeah, it's a project we like on Kickstarter. That surprised me too. I think that BioWare has to be okay with being BioWare. Like, it seems like ever since EA bought it, EA wants to make it a game franchise, the one game franchise to rule them all. They want, I mean, they kind of did the same thing with Dead Space, didn't they? They went from games that were really good at a more narrow selection of things and bloated out into this, you know, pablum, a nothing, because it's trying to be too many things at once. And meanwhile, if you look at, like, if you compare it, and everybody compares The Witcher to Dragon Age, and I don't think they're anything alike, but the thing that CD Projekt does is they're much more self-aware internally. They trash talk a good game externally, but internally, they're very, very aware. First of all, they didn't really know what they were doing. They were learning. So they kept humble enough to learn. But also they knew what they were good at and they knew what they wanted to do. And they got better and better and better and better because of that. You saw the constant improvement in the Witcher series. Now, move over to BioWare. And part of what I think happened with Mass Effect Andromeda, and I talked about this on one of the videos I did. Mass Effect is now the franchise that everybody copies. In television sci-fi, in movies, you go into the plotting rooms for costumes in a lot of the sci-fi series. There's a lot of sci-fi series shot in the Toronto area. And you go in there, and they've always got it. They've got Quarian up there, you know, all these different Mass Effect characters. And it's like, yeah, see, this is the issue, is that Mass Effect is now the thing that people are copying, so Mass Effect has nothing left to copy. And BioWare has never been especially good at brand new ideas. They're very good at combining. What David Gator did well with Dragon Age is he borrowed from history, and combined, like, you know, for the Qunari, for instance, the Ottomans, the Spartans, with a little bit of the Aryans from India, and you have the Qunari, and so he created this kind of, Oxman character, but their culture and all that stuff was very much driven from history. And so BioWare has run out of things to copy, and so they've run out of story. And so there was that weird stuff with the convoluted thing with the brother and sister, and there was so much dissonance in the way that they unpacked that, because people were firing questions at me, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm playing a pre-build, and I normally don't do that, but I wanted to see how bad the Sarah Ryder animations actually were. So I'm playing a pre-build, and I've got this father who I don't really know, and that's okay. And yes, there is a lot of copying in No Man's Sky in Andromeda Kroganchar. So you have this father who you don't know, but that's fine. That's an option. I mean, I always pick I didn't really know him, because I didn't. I have no idea who this fucking guy is. But the brother, who is a twin, and they eventually show the stuff about you having this past with them. And so the game is giving you bits and pieces of what your relationship with your brother is, but not enough to roleplay it. But they also didn't give the player enough freedom to just decide that their relationship with their sibling was anything they wanted, including hostile. So it fell in this uncanny valley. And that, I think, was part of why people had such a bad reaction to the whole thing. Because people will play games that look like junk if it's fun, right? If the gameplay is really fun. Undertale didn't look so shit hot, right? It was just a really fun game. But, and I felt like the characterizations of Scott and Sarah, and I had a similar complaint with the Witcher, but The Witcher's an action RPG, straight up action RPG. I got used to it kind of being much like Horizon Zero Dawn. It's an action RPG, so they do take role-playing control away from you at pivotal moments. And that drives me crazy. Anything that has RPG, don't put words in my character's mouth. Either I'm role-playing or I'm not, which is it. But now we have this action RPG thing where you get to pick the weapons and armor, but then your character starts talking on their own. I'm not going to say this, but I will answer your question. No, I can't, because that's still too much information. I don't want anybody to get in trouble. I regret doing that now. People freaked out. Let's move on. I shouldn't have done that. People just went nuts about it. So let's just consider it a mistake on my part. Let's move on. I was talking about Andromeda. And what was it talking about? Well, they're talking about the chat. I'll pick it up here. Sorry. Yeah, the role-playing of characters. And the thing about The Witcher 3 they did well was that you started to understand, and the reason I forgive The Witcher more for making Geralt do what Geralt's gonna do is that he was a character in a very popular series of Polish books and a TV show and so on before the games were made. So he did sort of have a hardwired character. I thought it was interesting the way they introduced people to him through an amnesia plot. So if you wanted to, you could change him a little bit. But Geralt's still Geralt. We don't have that tradition for Scott and Sarah Ryder. And so I forgive them less for that. Because there's no context to it. And so, and you can't customize, you can't make Geralt a black woman, right? There's no character customization, and I'm okay with that. He is him. Again, action RPG. Mass Effect just really seemed to lack a clear creative vision other than we want to make ships and planets and let the money roll in. It really didn't feel like it had... Toxkill is putting it better than I do. He says, I feel games and entertainment at the moment are trying to make the token perfect game movie, whatever. It has to be an action adventure FPS with RPG leveling elements game-wise. And this, there's always the dominant type of game paradigm. And this bugs me about the game industry because it's a mark and we can't do anything about it. Gaming's not a very old industry if you actually think about it. But that's a good point, Landon, that I'll bring up after I say this, that there's a lot more space for breadth in film and television, and even that's very restrictive. But, there's always comedies, dramas, mysteries, action series. There's a sampling of stuff. At the AAA level, people go, oh, shooters are popular, let's make another shooter. Instead of going, there's 4 shooters out there right now, let's make an action platformer. And the one kind of brand that bucked that, because they're sitting the fence between Japan and North America, was Sony, was their PlayStation brand. They started bringing out puzzle platformers and things like that. Nintendo did to a point as well on the DS with the JRPG stuff. Like they're doing so well on the DS with stuff like Fire Emblem, because there aren't that many of that type of game. So if you like that type of game, there's only a few places to go for it. And because Sony, experimented with Uncharted, because they're doing interesting, innovative things, they did that straight up action adventure game with the God of War franchise. When shooters started to decline in interest, when people just basically got bored of there being too many shooters, Sony was much better positioned than Xbox was to adapt. They already had stuff coming out. Instead of having to scramble and half-ass stuff like Recore, which could have been a great game if it had more time. It seems like Microsoft is under budgeting their projects as well, which you can't do as the number 2 company. You have to spend money to make money in that regard. This is AAA. There's a lot of money. But let me go back to that comment I saw that I wanted to... right. Landon said that the sibling situation in Dragon Age 2 did a very good job with what your relationship with your family was like. Yeah, that's true compared to Mass Effect. You know why? Because the game gave it to you. The game said, this is our relationship. Like Bethany told you what it was. Carver told you what it was. It was given to you. The problem with Andromeda is your sibling's in a coma. So when you're interacting with them, you're basically talking to themselves. And give me something. Either give it to me or let me make it up. Don't get stuck both. But that's a good point. And Krogachar, I agree. I felt the same way. He said it's so funny that a World War II shooter is suddenly an exciting announcement again. I'm starting to feel old. I do too. It's so funny because I remember when that was Call of Duty. It was just, Call of Duty is a World War II shooter franchise that changed with Call of Duty 4. And now, I haven't seen them, Pete. They're not about gaming, so I haven't watched them. It's interesting because one of the things I've found with the preliminary research for Lady Bits is, And this is just like doing written surveys of female game developers of this group that was kind enough to let me distribute there. Even though it's a relatively small sample size, I'm already starting to get a picture of how many different interests and how many different opinions there are of women working in the industry. And that's very exciting to me, in that goes into what I'm saying in the show, is that there's multiple viewpoints. We can't say one is right and one is wrong. And people are afraid to speak their mind if it's not in lockstep with what the popular clique of the day is saying. And that isn't good for creativity. That isn't good for advancement. That isn't good for innovation. It's, if we don't speak up in terms of if something's not working or if something could work better, companies can spend a lot of time pissing money away on something that's actually not working. And they can say they've worked really hard trying to, be more welcoming to women. But if women in the industry don't actually speak up about what actually makes them feel welcome, if we continue to allow people to speak for us, we're, not going to make things better. And people say, well, what do we have to make things better? That's the first, the first thing people jump on is, why is it our responsibility to make things better? Well, I say this because the women I've spoken to do have things they would prefer they didn't have to deal with. And this isn't a question of right or wrong. This is a question of, if anybody feels like they can't say, hey, it would make me better at my job if I could do this, or it would make coming to work more enjoyable if this didn't happen or this did. It's one thing to not expect you're immediately going to get it. It's another thing to think you can't say that at all without negative repercussions. And that is where we're at. People are very afraid to speak. And it's, I knew it was going to be difficult to get people to go on the record, but wow, getting people to even talk in emails. You can tell they're guarded. They're afraid they're going to get in trouble for talking about it. And like, one of the things I can't totally figure out, people keep saying, I might get fired, I might get fired, I might get fired. You ask them for an example of somebody who did get fired, and it's almost like an urban legend thing there. People actually can't name names. They heard about a guy who heard about a guy who heard about a guy. But the thing is that these companies, these contracts that people sign in gaming are so in favor of the corporation, of the employer, because people just want to make games, that they could fire them for practically anything if they wanted to. They don't even have to provide a reason, because a lot of people they're not even employees, they're contractors. And so you're contracted for that game. They don't actually fire you. They just don't renew your contract. And that's the reality for a lot of people in tech jobs right now. Guys, if I don't answer our question, just kind of assume I actually don't know what you're talking about and you have to provide more information for me. But yeah, there really is a culture of fear in gaming right now. And yeah, Simon, could almost call it a don't ask, don't tell. You cannot have a culture of fear and effectively create fun products. That cautiousness bleeds through. And you can see in certain games, the Witcher franchise is one of them, Saints Row, a lot of these kind of Eastern European-based companies, they don't give a fuck. And it comes through in the products, and I think that's why people fall in love with them, is because they seem to just be doing their thing. And so people feel good because you're a part of you're a part of people doing their thing. And so you feel more free of the bullshit of the real world because of that. Somebody asked a question that let me try to find it. Oh yeah, Otaku Cat, you've asked this a few times. What's the best sex scene between in video game, I guess, in a video game? And I don't want to come across as sex negative here. You guys know they're not. Okay, I'll answer the question and then I'll answer longer, so I don't want to seem like I'm hedging. For me, the best ones are in God of War, because there's an element of humor to them, and they're interactive, and it's amazing how many people actually think you're seeing Kratos having sex when it's really not. It's a cherub squirting water. Or it's a couple of Aphrodite's handmaidens watching and describing the sexual encounter, but you don't actually see it. They're so well done. People think there is hardcore sex in God of War games. There isn't. And God of War gets right what a lot of these games get wrong. The scenes are interactive. They don't make you put down the controller and sit there being a passive observer while a couple characters get it on. This is a video game. You know, if I want to watch porn, it's a lot cheaper than the cost of a video game. I'm here to game. And see, Otaku, you asked me why you shit on my answer. You know, like you asked. I told you, why you gotta be, oh, this sucks. Come on. And yeah, it's what Taco Cat said. God of War was the most lackluster thing to FAP to. LOL. Well, like I said, there are cheaper ways to FAP. Like, that's why I joked that Dead or Alive Extreme should have been a game you can play one-handed. And, you know, that's the thing. Are you making FAP material? And if so, are you making it only for men? Or, because I admit, you know what kicked me out of the sex in Witcher 2, I think it was? Geralt's still wearing his drawers. He's wearing those baggy boxer short type things. And it's like, man, Triss is bare ass naked and on full view, and he's wearing saggy drawers. Like, give me equal opportunity FAP. You know, like, give the gay men and the women just as much to see in a scene with a man and a woman in it than that, you know, the male gaze that everybody complains about. And I don't like the whole idea of the male gaze. I think there's too many issues with it. But it is true that when you got Triss bare-ass naked and Geralt is behind her in saggy drawers, what's going on there? Is there, like, is he doing her through the pee hole in the shorts? Why hasn't he taken off his drawers? You know? Like, why is she full frontal nudity and he's got freaking saggy drawers, and they're kind of dirty. Like, ew, it's like in The Witcher 3 when they talk about him having lice in his beard. That beard never came back. Never, ever, ever in my game. Because, like, ew, I know he's going to be getting with a bunch of ladies. That's disgusting. Okay? What I meant, Oron, was in that particular scene, because this is no Witcher game has ever showed female genitals, though. They did show a dildo. But this was in 2, and she was bent over forward, so it was a bit of a Basic Instinct thing. And it's, you know, it's one of those things where, and this is where I go off on a bit of a tirade, I admit. This is why I don't like the male gaze, okay? And I haven't done this in any other content because I try to make it quick. But I think that what people actually call the male gaze, which is, oh, make content that's appealing to men, but also avoid anything that, uh, would put men off. Why do we assume that the depiction of a male body is going to put men off? We don't assume that about women so much. If you look what's on the cover of a men's magazine, it's usually a hot woman. If you look what's on the cover of a women's magazine, it's usually a hot woman. Women are much more comfortable seeing other women's bodies than men seem to be. Because I guess women don't have the equivalent of the urinal game, but there is a certain amount of assumption with the idea of men, especially male genitals, are ugly. Let me tell you, the full spread on a vagina isn't so great to look at objectively either, but we see it all the time in porn, right? We even kind of see it, I mean, the whole Basic Instinct thing, where it's sort of shadowy crotch. We have decided socially, for no real apparent reason, because historically this has not always been the case, but we have decided that women's bodies are things of inherent beauty that can be physically displayed, whereas men's bodies are somehow, I mean, you see men's bodies used for jokes as much as it's a fairly recent thing. You go back to the Greeks, and there are a lot of there's a lot of naked men art. There's a lot of statues. I mean, the statue of David, the whole thing. You go back there, male bodies were displayed quite a bit. But coming into modern time, it's always like, oh man, I don't want to see that. Guys always put on this big show that I see. And why are you freaked out by another male body? Right? We have to ask ourselves that. What kind of social programming are we giving guys that, and it's a bit of homophobia, let's face it. You have to do that so that people don't think you're gay. And I think that'll go away because big deal, you're gay now. But it's this that was a great scene, Gilgamesh. They talked about the show called Eastern Promises. All of the Cronenberg, Viggo Mortensen films are fantastic. Cronenberg actually uses male nudity really, really well. Cronenberg's stuff defies the male gaze. Male director, defying the male gaze. It has the entire time. But in Eastern Promises was the one that was mentioned, but what was the other? The one based on a comic book he was in with Maria Bello, where he smashed a coffee pot in the guy's face, and it was actually a realistic injury. It wasn't, it just fell down. No, there were like boils on his face from the hot water as well as the cuts. What was that called? A History of Violence. That's right, A History of Violence. There are 2 sex scenes in that film that actually tell a story. Like, the 2 sex scenes between Viggo Mortensen and Maria Bello in that film show how the relationship is evolving throughout the film. And so it absolutely makes sense. It's absolutely plot driven. It is not gratuitous. It's well done. And it's that is an example of sex that actually does advance the plot. So if sex advances the plot, or tells you something about the characters, then I'm good with it. When it seems just, and it stops the movie dead or the game dead. I mean, you know that whole HBO thing, where I always say HBO is it stands for Hey Boobs Out, because in the first episode of every HBO show, especially like the season premiere, says like, whoop, boobs. Why? What does it tell us? Nothing, because we usually don't see that woman who's just there to go, whoop, boobs out. We never see her again. She's some interchangeable chickie that the male main character is. I mean, the one variation on that theme is Paul Giamatti getting frickin' peed on in the first episode of Billions. You know, what is that really? Why do we have to see that gratuitousness? Well, it's to get people talking. Okay, I'm not even gonna. I laughed, funny, but not gonna repeat it. I think the other thing we really need to discuss when we talk about sex in games or any kind of art is whether there's an emotional component to it. I personally think the BioWare sex scenes are pretty awkward. The only one I kind of liked was the one with Isabella in Dragon Age 2, because it is really different. They kind of did the big bold colors, but I mean, she kind of jumps up on Hawk and wraps her legs around and like all this stuff. It's you know, it's cool that way. Some of the others in Origins, it was so damn awkward. And the one that kind of got me in Origins that it didn't make any sense is the one at the end with Morgan and, well, this is a spoiler, but how do I put this without being a spoiler? Oh man. It's a sex scene where your character should not even be in the room. Like, why are you seeing this? You know, like, are you watching? Why? You know, BioWare has kind of issues with point of view. And this one scene was like, why am I even, it doesn't even make any sense watching it. You know, like, why am I here? I don't get it. Whereas others, I mean, I thought I know everybody freaked out about the Yennefer scene in The Witcher 2 with them on the unicorn, but I actually thought that was in character. You know, I thought that because they talked about the fact that they're in the game, their relationship is very forced. That they're stuck together by these you know, sort of cosmic forces, and one of the things you get to choose in The Witcher 3 is to continue with that sort of bond that they have or break it. And I thought that was a really cool moment. Like they actually talk to each other like grown-ups. People talking to each other like grown-ups in a game. What a shock. But you know, their sexual relationship before that is very forced, and it is very you know, it's that thing where when people are really when they're not good for each other and the sex is great but the rest of it isn't so great, and the thing about Geralt and Yennefer is too much alike, but so because the sex is great and that's it, they have to keep doing more and more and more and more outrageous sex to get the same buzz. And I thought that was cool. Like, that showed a bit of a life truth that you don't normally see in a video game. McGanny in the chat talked about Yennefer being completely unlikable. The fact that she was traditionally unlikable is why I loved Yennefer. Pete, you keep the conspiracy theories up. I am going to kick you. We don't do that here. You're new, so I'm giving you a warning. Thanks. But the thing I love about Yennefer, love about her, is that CD Projekt had the guts to have a woman in a game make aggressive choices that the player may disagree with. too often women have to be these perfect supporters, and that is what Triss does represent, and I'm cool with that. But I'm cool with that because Yennefer is in the game too. And so you have different types of women in the game. And you don't have to like all of them. Krogan brought up that I really, really dislike Sarah in Inquisition. And it is a totally personal reason for that. Sarah just reminds me of a couple of girls I used to date, and they were freaking psycho. Like, that's what it's like. Nope. You know, I become the yips, but the nope. Telephone, nope. You know, just and you know, proverbial dick shrivel up in body kind of thing. That's my issue with Sarah. And I was really hoping, because I had sort of the same response to Morgan at first in Origins. Like, oh, here's this character again, right? But Morgan got so deep into there's so much to Morgan, and you really got the sense that she was quite lonely, and I grew to really like her because I grew to understand her. Sarah just stayed juvenile and shallow, and she's one of those people you expect there to be more to, but there really isn't. She's just mean, you know, like. And I had a real issue with the whole way she was pranking Cullen. It's like, oh yeah, like, why don't you screw with the guy who's in terrible physical pain because he's trying to kick drugs? That's a really awesome things to do, you little, you know? And yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Sarah was an attempt to write Harley that missed the point of Harley. Oh God, I wouldn't even give it that much credit. I see that, but there's just too much, and PB, Mike, you're right, has similar with Sarah, where there's a lot of, oh man, this crazy chick must be really great in bed, in those characters. PB I ended up liking, despite myself. I liked, what's her name, female Garrus, Vetra. I really liked her better, and I liked Jal. I should have the BioWare romances I like are the romances that are the romances, and the problem with too many BioWare romances now is they're yanking away the happily ever after. And I know it's stupid, and I know it's juvenile, but this is escapism. Like, these are these big stories that are very much based in chivalric tradition and medievalism. And CHCar, I want the option. And I mean, even with Alistair was such a great, like, oh, he's a nerd boy and he's got a bit of a swagger, and then you find out he's actually a virgin, and had a bit of an issue with the way they handled that later in game too. But it's okay to have an issue with something. I think you should struggle with art, but you know, after all that, after the big sweeping romance, then he's referring to the warden as, you know, the old ball and chain in Dragon Age 2 if they actually get married. And it's sort of the same thing with BioWare has never made a gay male character you can actually stay together with. The we all know what happens in Mass Effect, and Dorian has to leave too, and I'm like, well, this is a bummer. I don't play these things to be sad, and I'm okay with the one who runs away. There's the one who runs away in every single Dragon Age game. There is somebody who, if you romance, they bug out somewhere in game. In Origins, it's Morgan. In Dragon Age 2, it's Fenris, and you actually have to spend a really, really long time and there's very good reasons for that. The Fenris romance in Dragon Age 2 is, that might be my favorite one. That might actually be my favorite run, the Fenris romance, because he's messed up. He's a male victim of sexual assault. They hint at it. They don't come out right and say it, but it's pretty obvious. And it needs its time, and it's very dramatic, and it's believable, and it was something different. It was not by the numbers at all, and I thought that was really, really great. And my kind of headcanon is that the bisexual characters in the Dragon Age games, all of them actually feel like gay with an open mind to me. I think Liliana actually does prefer women. I think Zevran actually does prefer men. And I think Fenris is actually gay with a thing for mages. He's just so damn angry about it. As Kroganjar said, Fenris is extremely objectified. His entire body has been reshaped for his master. And Auron, I can see how I sound like Kim Wexler from Better Call Saul right now. I can absolutely see that. Somebody else asked about Catherine. I have heard wonderful things about Catherine. I have not had a chance to play it. And it's funny because Catherine was one of those games that in the industry, and this is actually a marketing mistake that's worth talking about, because Atlas always buys the badge insert at E3. And one year it was Catherine, and they had like the good girl on the front and the bad girl on the back. But there was no context. Like, there was no text on it that told us what the game was. It was just, it looked like a fan service game. Now, of course, it turned out not to be a fan service game at all, but nobody knew what it was. And so you get this big, giant, like, what is this? What is this woman that I have to plaster on my chest? And you have this combination of, really? And don't make me marketing for your game. And so most people like whipped it out and threw it in the garbage, rolled their eyes. And I don't think the game got enough of a fair chance from industry people because of that experience. It was a bad way to introduce the game to people. And I don't think it's because people... And this is what I'm finding with the surveys from female professionals so far. It's not that anybody has a particular issue with sexy ladies. It's that very bland, cookie cutter, thoughtless version of sexy that isn't really explained. It isn't contextualized. So, it's the same thing with me praising A History of Violence for the sex scenes and me going, really, HBO? Because it's just some woman you never see again. People want to be invested in things. People need context. They need to know why I should care. And I think the nice thing, and this is what sets me apart from the dork side, is I think the nice thing about there being so much nudity out there right now, so many boobies, nudity and even some porn being so cheap and easy to get, is that it's not the draw that it once was. You cannot sell your products with just sex anymore. You have to be clever about it. And I like that because it means that marketing has got to find new ways. The beer commercials have gotten more clever now that you can't just load it with bikini models. But I miss in gaming, I miss the booth babes. I miss the fraggles. I miss that female contingent because, speaking totally selfishly, it means it's more of a sausage party now because I go in there and you look for friendly faces because it's so crowded and people are so fucking rude at those things. They really are. Some of them you never know if they're just not very well socialized, if they're actually being a jerk to you. People don't talk to each other. They don't mingle. It's so different from other conferences in that regard. People walk around constantly on their phones. There's no mixing of people. And so you see one of these promo girls and you smile at them and they smile back and you can have a bit of a conversation and you can have a bit of small talk. And I always ask them about how they wear their shoes all day and not have their feet die on the third day. I've gotten some really good tips, but they were people who made me feel less alone at those conferences back in the day. They were almost safe havens for me of, hey, you're somebody I might actually share the ladies' room with at some point. We can joke about how creepy Master Chief, creeping in the mirror is. And I don't get that from the game, the ones with the hair that doesn't grow out of their hair with a head natural color anyway, like hair that's more the color of my shirt than my hair. That's what was that was so awesome about the Lady Bits party we did at Hooters is it was interesting. It was a real test of in assumptions because a couple of these ladies showed up interested in the project and they showed up and they had the blue hair and the purple hair and all this. Everybody had a moment of, are they here to yell at us? And no, they were there to be cool. So, not every woman who's into gaming, blue hair is terrifying. Like, that's awesome. Good thing to remember, because so many bad experiences. Because most of them, they look at me, and I tend to dress in a way that makes me feel confident at those conferences, and I use appearance, I use makeup and hair and clothes like armor. In things like E3 and those big conferences, a lot of people, because I am an introvert, I don't do well in big crowds. And so I have to put on a character so I don't want to run away screaming midday. And so I tend to dress up. I use, like the old glamour charms, like just do your hair, put on your makeup, wear something nice, stand up, stick it out. Like, lean in. It puts me in the right headspace to be able to go in there and be treated like absolute dog crap by publicists all the time, because you gotta talk your way in every single time. Oh, my appointment's at EA now. They're gonna have lost my appointment and they're gonna give me this stick eye and say, well, get what you can get because they didn't actually book it. I'm going to have to talk my way in every single demo. I can't do that if I feel like a scrub, like the way I talk to you guys, because I'm comfortable with you guys. I'm one of you, you're one of me. We're all gamers here, so I don't have to put on that game face. I don't have to suit up. I'm playing Persona to survive in public. And I need to feel confident because, you can always tell a PR person at a gaming event because they're the one in the $120 blouse. You know who they are. And I need to be wearing a $120 blouse so that my stats match up with their stats when I go up to the desk and be like, I deserve to be here. Because then it's the same thing. I'm one of them. Oh, you don't look like those nerds. So yeah, I'm cheating a little bit, but I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get in that room. Because one, I'm not American. And so you go to back of the line. There is no Canada desk at most booths at E3. It's US and international, and at some companies we're bundled into North America, and others were seen as international because we're non-US. At the Ubisoft booth, you show up, they don't know what to do, and so you call Jay from the Montreal office, and he comes and goes, yeah, no problem. Like, Canada doesn't even have a check-in spot at the Ubisoft. And no one really gets mad because it's Ubi. Ubi is just such a crazy company that it's all cool. Their booths are pandemonium. Because they always got the Just Dance thing in the middle, and so there's like a carrot dancing with a robot in the middle. It's yeah, it's someone just asked me if I ever do game coverage at PAX. Jacob, I did PAX once, and it was an absolutely wonderful experience. But then I find out about their cosplay policy. And I'm thinking about going to Boston next year just because of the cost, because I can drive, and because I've got a friend in Vermont that I can visit, so it cuts the cost down. It's just too expensive to do the full-blown US convention experience anymore. But PAX was a great time, and that's why I want them to change their cosplay policy. Because what I loved about it, what made me feel comfortable, is that it wasn't the scowling media people you see at E3. It was the fans, cosplayers included. And there was a sexy GLaDOS from Portal. There was a chick. There were a lot of Felicias from Darkstalkers, you know, the cat girls. But the sexy GLaDOS was the one that got me. She was wearing one of those, it was practically like a Borat bikini, and she had the GLaDOS orbs coming out of her back, and she looked hot, and it was one of those things, you look way too young. You know, one of those that you get with cosplayers? And yeah, Jessica Negri was there with it all hanging out, and she looked amazing. She looked like Juliet from Lollipop Chainsaw. And I didn't know till like after that, because I was there, I didn't know that was a problem. And that was, I am more comfortable in those environments because they are environments where women are standing out. They're not blending in. We are there to be seen. We are there to be recognized. You cannot pretend we do not exist. And when that went away, I felt like the individual character of individual women started seeping away from the gaming dialogue as well. That, you know, it all became the blue hair clones, right? Or that silvery purpley gray color that Kelly Osbourne had her hair for a while. These women you see at game conferences are practically interchangeable for each other. It's this nerd girl uniform. And I find that objectifying. I think that if you have to look like everybody else, then you're getting it in your head that you're not allowed to be an individual. And there's just such a joy when there's cosplayers running around and there's people in giant armor, and there's, you know, 18-year-olds with their asses half hanging out. And part of me goes, oh, I hope you know what impact that has on people. You probably don't. And there's an innocence to that I just find so beautiful. And I'm sorry that gaming is losing that. I'm sorry that, and I mean, apparently there's still plenty of cosplayers at PAX. I just don't like the idea that there's body shaming inherently put into their rules with their booths. I think that as somebody who's done it, as somebody who's done the booth babe thing, I think that the the main thing that should matter if you're in a booth is that you know the product. And if you've got a woman there who looks awesome and she knows what she's talking about, it should not matter what she wears. It should not matter what she wears, no matter what she wears. I mean, don't forget, I come from theater, right? And so in theater, the professionalism, because of the quick changes backstage, it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, bi, pansexual, whatever. People are going to be naked backstage and you're expected to be respectful to them. You are expected to be able to handle that and not treat a person any differently because you happen to get a bit of nip flash your way while they were doing a quick change. And so this body shaming, this ew, dancing girl, is what I was trained to treat as unprofessional behavior, because in theater, in performance, it is. And so the culture is so different. And to me, because you do have women like Trisha Helfer, who has done bikini shoots and things like that as a model, coming into gaming and doing amazing voice work in gaming. Those women deserve just as much respect as the cookie cutter geek girl uniform types. And right now, I don't think they are. I don't think women who come in from the wrong side of the tracks. I don't think there should be a wrong side, by the way, but women like that who come in to do a job should be treated like less. But let's face it, if you make rules that say these things are bad, those women, there is stigma there. Those women are going to be treated differently. And that's why I picked up the whole idea of mosaic feminism, that I coined that term, because I realized that the problem with intersectional theory is that it narrows, right? It's this whole lived experience thing. And the fatal flaw in that is that some person's lived experience could be, a dancing girl makes me uncomfortable, I don't want them around. Well, that stomps on the lived experience of the dancing girl whose lived experience is, this is a better paying, more fun, better for me job than flipping burgers for minimum wage. If you don't like it, that should not be my problem. So these two lived experiences get into conflict. Who's right? Well, with the mosaic feminism concept, they're both right. It's no question of right. It's a question of, this is one experience, this is another experience. Both have equal validity. Both are a tile in the mosaic. We don't have to fight over, is it good for all women? Nothing's good for all women. Nothing's good for all women. You give me a single choice, nothing is. The only thing that is good for all people is choice. The most choices for the most people. That's where we need to get. Krogenchar described it basically as intersectionalism without the collectivism. Something, but don't forget, intersectionalism is how things affect individual people, which is, it has its place. Like I said, the big failing with it is you start hearing about, this is something I was accused of during the Lady Bits campaign, that I'm ignoring the lived experience of people of color. And I don't know what they're going on about, but that's something. But the thing is, it's so easy to fling that at someone. Because if you're a true intersectionalist, there is no such thing as the lived experience of people of color. There are lived experience of individual peoples of color that intersect with their race and their gender and their sexual orientation and all that stuff. It all intersects. But something's gone so wrong that people can say, you negate the lived experiences of people of color, and that strips away the individuality of individual people of color. And since I actually went to a school that had a massive Afro-Caribbean population, I saw through the lived experiences of my friends, not case studies, people I actually cared about, that there is no single Afro-Caribbean experience. It depends on what island you came from, what educational system you went through in those islands, and how much money your family had. If you were mixed race in some islands, like if you're a brownie in Jamaica, it's shitty. And that's very different than the mixed race experience in the US, where, you look more white. There's no such thing as the experience of people of color. Every person's experience is different. And this is what drives me crazy. And this is why I sort of had to redefine. And I'm excited to kind of... Oh, I missed something, Jacob. I'm sorry. I'm going to scroll up. Sorry I don't finish off, guys. I want to get to your questions. It looks like I missed a comment somewhere, Jacob. I'm sorry. Crap. For some odd reason, the first part of your comment didn't come through, Jacob. Can you restate? I apologize for that. I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and I don't see it. Unless it's way up. It's a really active chat today, so I'm missing shit. Oh man, Patches, if you think the shelf behind me is massive, I wonder if I can show you the display. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm just gonna flip the webcam around to show you the other side of my room. That is a toy display. I haven't moved the TV box yet. That is a toy display. It keeps going. And this is just one room. There's a lot of nerd over here. Superman stuff. Justice League stuff. What else can I show? There's more stuff on the back wall behind me. You can't really see those. That's, Captain Marvel, who we can't call Captain Marvel anymore. You can't see Light Bloom. He's now called Shazam. There's a Justice League. There's Superman. There's an old Bob Kane Batman. And that's my little Andy Serkis shrine back there. It's like Gollum watching King Kong fight a dinosaur. I love that King Kong fighting a dinosaur. Fay Ray is freaking broken on it. And I still keep it. And you see Batman Beyond guarding a plant. And then the Wonder Woman cookie jar. And then there's all the game consoles. And my vacuum, which I use a lot. I have 3 vacuums. And then over here, we have Batman and Robin. And I collect masks of indigenous peoples from around the world when I travel. Because they're similar to superheroes. So we got a Jaguar god here. And people would go, oh my god, cultural appropriation. No, capitalism that improves the quality of life for the people in these places my white ass visited. Not the same. So that's a little brief tour of my house. That's sorry, what's that on the couch? That's the couch. Yes, that's the couch you can't put your name on. Crooked chair. Oh man, the chair for the Ladybit set, it's purple and it's round and it's a thing of beauty. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm so excited for it. I actually did a house tour for Carlos Flores, the guy who voiced Dom on Gears of War, because he's apparently a big nerd too. Am I going to see the Wonder Woman movie? Yes, I am trying to see Wonder Woman. I am trying to keep my expectations low because they're playing this, it's the best reviewed movie and blah, 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 blah. And it's the same trick they used with Batman versus Superman. And we all know how that turned out. What they do is they handpick the critics that go and see it. They stacked the deck, and so the movie had this ridiculously high rating, and then it wasn't very good, and people got mad, and we all know in gaming what happens when reviews seem inflated. But yeah, I want to see if Jacob repeated his question. And doesn't seem to. Oh, it sucks. Um, okay, moving on. Um, okay, wow, there's a lot of people. I'm not sure if they're just giddy or they're trolling today. I'm being benevolent. Um, okay. People are starting to talk about game reviews now. Um, sorry, not game reviews, movie reviews. I I'm one of those people, and this is what gave me sort of a disconnect about game reviews. Why does my shirt keep creeping up today when I move? Shirt are fighting the boobs. Um, but because that's the first part. But Jacob, reason you asked what? That's the part I haven't seen. Um, like, what's the actual question? I get the reason you asked. What's the actual question? Um, yeah, the DC Universe movies, yeah, they're too dark. I mean, what Marvel gets it right. The Marvel films aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but at least they're fun. What old game do you like to see a remake of that you that you think it deserves it? I'm not laughing at you, Taku Cat. I'm looking at the comment below you. Um, yeah, this sure thinks it's HBO. Um, I kind of feel like games are a product of the times, and I'd like to see games preserved so that they run in their original format. What games do I want to see remade? It's an interesting question. I wouldn't mind seeing an update on some of the old adventure games, the ones that didn't get as much play. They did like um, adventure game versions of some popular fantasy novels back in the day. Some of the Terry Brooks stuff, the Might and Magic stuff. Um, I Orcar, can you please stop talking about sperm? It's like really distracting. Thanks. Um, the but yeah, it those might be interesting. Um, yeah, this is the kind of web stream we do. I don't kick people. I just go, please stop talking about sperm. Like, unless there's a quick time event involving sperm or there's some sort of game related spermage, don't talk about sperm. Simon the Sorcerer, uh I haven't played, no. Oh, dress code for people working in a booth. Okay. It's the PAX thing. There actually is a dress code. It actually says no aggressive cleavage or navels, or I forget the other thing. You can be removed. And cosplayers also, according to the PAX rules, also can be removed at the discretion of the convention. Now, the reality is that um, uh, the any convention can remove you. They can refuse the right. They reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. But um, I just think that there is a cultural element. Like if Dragon Con tried to pull an aggressive naval rule, there would be a revolt. People run around wearing duct tape there. So it really is. I think it's a reaction. I think it's a poorly worded rule. Um, let's face it, guys aren't going to be thrown out for not wearing shirts. This is a rule that predominantly affects women. It was based on a Jessica Negri lollipop chainsaw costume. It is completely disingenuous. Like it's PAX's way of saying we don't want sluts at booths because reasons. And they find a whole bunch of stupid bullshit word salad crap to justify. But we all know what it is. And I know this is a bit extreme. I stand by it. I'm not going to explain it, but I think the rule's anti-women. Period. End of story. I just think it is. And I know that's not popular opinion, but that's why I'm here. Um, um, So what have I got? Somebody asked about the VGA remakes of King's Quest 1 through 3, Quest for Glory 2, and Space Quest 2. Haven't played Quest for Glory 2 or Space Quest 2. I have played the VGA remakes of King's Quest 1 through 1 and 2. I didn't know there was a VGA remake of 3. I prefer the originals. I like the old parser-based games just because they were so stupidly annoying. Um, and I don't know. It's just nostalgia for me. I recognize that uh, that it is more accessible to do point and click. Um, but I don't know. That's how I learned to be super fast typer. Is you got to learn to type swim fast enough so Sir Graham doesn't die. I mean, I have so much nostalgia for that. And oh, really? You say you introduced a furry friend to Shema's Dance? Shema's Dance is one of the most confusingly erotic things in gaming ever. Like seriously, it's hypnotic. It was like her hips are doing what those spinner things do now. And I just saw on Facebook from a friend of mine with epilepsy. Apparently, those spinners can cause seizures if they have lights on it. So please be careful around your friends with seizure conditions. Oh, Julian, you got the Batmobile coming out of. Oh God, I remember this. I know this Easter egg. Okay, that is in 1 or 2. I thought it was the one where you jump for the bird. And every so often, it's just sort of a random trigger. A Batmobile will drive out of the cave. Back in the days where Warner didn't send you a cease and desist for doing things like that. They recognized that it was an homage. It's funny, Krogan Char. A lot of people had trouble right at the beginning of King's Quest 1 the way you did. Hagatha's Cave, that's right. But Taco Cat, I haven't played very many Japanese visual novels. I have tried them. I am very picky with my anime. I am a Death Note, One Piece, Battle of the Planets kind of girl. I actually like the shonen stuff better than the shoujo stuff. And shoujo is a lot more what the visual novels are like. And so, like, to me, the closest thing I get to a Japanese visual novel that I actually enjoy is something like Persona. Um, uh, it's, yeah, this is when we talk about, like, gender typical and when people start saying, well, women like this. Well, not all women do. You know, I actually, Katawa Shoujo is one of the ones that I played on the recommendation of somebody who the game meant a lot to them. So I tried it. That's one of those ones that I'm, can you get Space Quest on GOG, by the way? I want to play those games again. It's been ages. But, the, Kitawa Shoujo, I actually still, I think... Oh, no, it got wiped out. I thought I still had the icon on my desktop. Let me see. I might still have it. But, yeah, that is one of the ones I have played. No, I don't still have it. It's not installed anymore. The Witcher's still installed. But, yeah, I did try that one. It's really hard to get the right answers to do what you want it to do. I think while I'm resting, I want to play within the next week. I want to try Nier. Yeah, you guys would see a let's play of Katawa Shoujo? Isn't that kind of slow? Like, the problem with it takes forever to get into. It's text of the hospital room, and then all that stuff. Okay, that's interesting. Patches has to run. I should probably wrap. It's been 2 hours. My throat really hurts. It's, I wouldn't say it's well, I guess it's kind of a hentai game. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't call it that. It's certainly a dating sim. What do I think of abandonware? I think people abandon it. Um, um, is it heartwarming? It can be, Yosei. Um, it can be. Um, you can get real kind of relationship with the characters because they're all kind of screwed up. Um, but yeah, it I think it's free. So what game am I looking forward to next year? I don't know if they're gonna come out in the next year. Um, the Days Gone. I'm a sucker for rednecks fighting zombies. I just am. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the new God of War. Trying to think of what else. Those are the two real big ones. Um, oh yeah, Far Cry. Blah, right, Far Cry 5. I'm really looking forward to that. I have played the new King's Quest game. It's fun. I haven't been able to finish it. I just got behind. I really enjoy it. It's a different take on it, but it is really super cute. They did a good job. I think the Odd Gentleman really kept the tone of the originals in a way that Mask of Eternity just didn't. Ooh, I try to forget about that game. And yes, this does still work. Um, I think the battery's dead right now, or I may have taken the batteries out. Nope. See? It turns fine. Um, and then you can make it move. I had an old Paperboy handheld like this too. See? It still works. Wow, that noise is really annoying by modern standards. Oh wait, it's still going. Wow, I'm still kind of awesome at this game. I'm gonna turn that off. That's kind of annoying. But yeah, it still works. There we go. Um, yeah, the second chapter isn't as good as the first, but it does get better. Um, sorry, I lost. Frogger is another great one. Um, wow, I was playing this and um, I guess Katawa Shoujo, it's so relationship based that I consider it more of like a dating game, not hentai. I don't know, hentai to me is like yeah, I could see it being technically hentai, but yeah, it didn't register as hentai to me, if that made any point. Um the nudity inequality. Um Basically what Oron's saying here, and I'm trying to figure out how to parse it in a way that people won't go, yeah, forget about words, is that we deal with the reality that men only have one visible sex organ, where women have like a pair here, and well, technically you could say men have three because there's two testicles and a penis, but women have a secondary sex characteristic on their chest, men don't. And I, yes, that is true. I still think there's a lot more implied nudity with women. For instance, in Dragon Age with Dorian, he ain't wearing drawers. Like, you don't see his wang, but he's naked. And we get to see that he's naked. In The Witcher, they put pants on Geralt at a time that made no sense. And I just did think that some of those sex scenes, especially in 2, it was really more like awkward porn than a scene designed to show us anything. I just I felt like Triss was just really treated poorly in that game from start to finish. Like, you gotta try to understand that when a game starts off with a female character being called a man's whore, and you hear that a lot at the beginning, Triss is the Witcher's whore, the Witcher's whore, the Witcher's whore, and she actually loses her job as an advisor to the king because she is a Witcher's whore and not trusted. If the game then displays her in multiple sex scenes after that, it just, you can't see it as a beautiful thing in the same way, because it's like, all right, she's having great sex, but look what it cost her, you know? And I just didn't think it was well handled. And that's what I mean. Like, context matters so much in those things. And like the way it kind of, in the books, the way, because witchers are sterile, it's actually the other way around. That women ride Geralt's pogo stick a lot because they can have meaningless sex without getting pregnant. He's their whore. And that's sort of established in the book. So his promiscuity, I'm all right with. I was really hit between the eyes by the way it was handled with Triss in 2, because Triss isn't a whore. She's the furthest thing from that. And it was just too much. I liked her, and she's the sweet one, and for the game to treat her so badly, it just made me feel bad, and games shouldn't make me feel bad to play, you know? So that's involved as well. It just felt, it just felt, you know? And yeah, I would be good with The Witcher if Geralt wasn't wearing trunks, even if I didn't actually see what's under them. Because then I wouldn't be thinking, why didn't he take off his drawers? Like, why? Because then you imagine his, like, wang sticking out through these shorts, and why? You know, like, what's... Just, it's weird. Like, why is he wearing pants? It just seems like something they added for very little reason. And they were so dingy and bunchy that it was nasty. Like, Geralt probably has a fine ass. And even sort of that curve of the hip, like, that would be nicer to see than baggy, dirty drawers. You know? You don't want to think about this guy stinking or seeming like he has, you know, necker crust on him while he's getting it on. It's you know, there's that sort of thing. It just seemed like they went out of their way to clothe him. And no, I didn't see that one, Oron. And people are saying he was buck naked in 3, and different creative director. I mean, I've said numerous times that I think 3 is way improved from 2. I like the way they handle things much better. People are really going a long way with this sideways comment. I talk about just my personal reactions to a game. I don't know what to do in these situations, because when I talk about how I personally reacted to a game, I'm just having fun with it. And then it ends up dominating a conversation, and I don't care as much as some other people, and I do know there are people that feel very overwhelmed when this happens. And that's why I kind of say stop when people do things. I know people think I'm a bitch for doing it, and yeah, you can't play the third Witcher game without playing the first 2 Dustbox 1. But you gotta understand when someone makes a comment and everybody jumps on them, that makes them less likely to comment later on. If we want to be able to have these discussions, everybody is kind of responsible for communicating. You know, like on the one hand, you gotta be chill about somebody expressing their views. They don't have to agree. Just if they're not saying this is bad and should be taken out of the game, big deal they don't like something you like. So what? They should not be something that gets circulated on message boards and, oh, what a bitch, and I can't believe you said that. Why did you say that? Like, why is it your business what my opinion of a game was? You know? But the other side, I think too often people don't speak up about something that bothers them, and then they go and complain to their friends on a message board, and it becomes this thing, this echo chamber type thing, instead of doing what I do, which is say, stop that. Like, enough. And sometimes it can just be overkill. And it's not fair to the person if, you know, you go and talk shit about them and they never had the opportunity to stop. You know? Like, yeah, McGann's right. People don't disagree as much these days as they freak the fuck out. You know? Like, yeah. And why do they freak the fuck out? Because instead of talking to the person directly, instead of saying right to them, stop doing that, because you know what? That opens you up for criticism for being too sensitive too. And you know what's being too sensitive? Slinking away and not having the balls to tell somebody, cut it the fuck out. You know? That, I think, is more cowardly. That, I think, is having thinner skin. If you can't even stand up and say, I don't like that, stop, you got no one to blame but yourself if the behavior continues. That is a basic thing. Say, stop it. And you guys have seen me do that. But I think what happens is people don't stand on their own and have the confidence to say, I don't like this, knock it the fuck off. You know, they don't say that. They slink away their little circle jerk safe space, and they have their coloring books and their victim blankets, and they're doing hug therapy with a pillow, and they're starting talking about how so triggered they were. And as somebody who's been triggered, they can fuck right off on that. If you are that coherent, you are not fucking triggered. You're just having a bad day. Being triggered is something totally different, and it sucks, and you shouldn't want to be there. But they get in there and they get all this attention when they're fucking ignored the rest of their life, and that's why they're miserable to begin with. But they get all this attention for being a victim, and everybody tells them how bad it was, and how what a microaggression it was, or it's this or it's that, or it's, you know, they weren't there. They weren't there. They didn't see the other side. They're only getting the point of view from the person it bothered. And instead of giving people actual social skills to improve their fucking situation and allowing them to stand on their own and say to that person, I don't like this, can you please stop the next time? They encourage them to do the exact same thing again and not speak up for themselves and not say stop. Because if they say stop, somebody might actually have a bad reaction and go, what the fuck is wrong with you? Instead of them running off to their safe space coloring book land and getting all this positive attention for shit that ain't that big. And this is not adult behavior. This is not adult behavior. Okay? It isn't. You are not a grown-up if you cannot handle unpleasant words flung in your direction. You just... And that doesn't mean you should be able to take everything, right? That doesn't mean you should just eat it and say nothing. No, what I'm saying is if something's bothering you, figure out why, explain it to the person. Like the semen comment earlier is because it was distracting the chat. It was clearly making other people uncomfortable, so I asked them to stop, and they stopped. Awesome. And you know what? I have more respect for the guy for stopping, for doing it themselves so we can all hang out and be cool. I didn't have to ban anybody. That's ideal. Like, if you don't tell someone, they never have the chance to go, all right, cool, you know? And that is the only way to find out that somebody they didn't mean what they were saying. you know? And if you tell someone, stop it, that bothers me, and they keep going, yeah, then you have every right to say they're an asshole. But then you can actually say, I stopped them, I asked them to stop doing it and they didn't stop. That is something that everybody objectively can understand is not a very nice thing to do. And Gilgamesh, I banned one of those guys. I don't remember which one it was. One guy stopped. And I don't remember who it was anymore because they went away, and that's fine. But I did kick one of them. And yeah, Magani said, if people freak out for telling them to stop their bad behavior, you gotta stop talking to them. There's no reasoning with a brick wall with issues. Yeah, it's true. But the thing is, if you tell someone to stop and they don't, then the issue is not what they said. It's not whether they're racist or they're sexist or they're transphobic or any of those big sweeping social issues. It's not about that. It's one person disrespecting another person by not respecting their boundaries. And that is a simple thing that we don't get into these identity politics over. And that is something that most people, you don't need 4 years of basket weaving degrees to understand why that's an issue. You know, it's just like they were a dick who didn't care that you were bothered by it. Why would you want to give that person your time? You wouldn't, right? Everybody can understand that. You don't get into this debate now, because saying someone was racist, okay, or saying someone was sexist, even telling somebody they did something sexist or did something racist, that is upsetting to the person being accused of that stuff, right? Like, that hurts them, okay? Sometimes it's warranted. You know, if somebody goes, bitch, make me a sandwich, yeah, that's sexist. They earn that one. But a lot of people say things not understanding the undercurrents, you know, all that stuff. And so I find a lot of people respond better to, could you not do that? It's bothering me. Or could you not do that? It's distracting. I find people usually respond better to that than, that's racist, that's sexist. Because then they go, because that's like, most people see accusations of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, all that stuff to be, you're a horrible, evil person. It's like the worst thing in the world. People don't want to be racist. People don't want to be sexist. And so, it's, people are trained to say that stuff in college. I've seen it. Because they go to these consciousness groups and all this stuff. But when they get out in the real world, that doesn't help them. Because you don't get very far in a workplace going, that's sexist and that's racist once a week. You gotta learn to work it out with people who have different vocabularies and not confuse a syntax error for hate. Like, this is super important in stopping these garbage fires that form. And unfortunately, there's so much heat. People are so afraid to speak because of these isms that get thrown around that no communication is happening. And people just start feeling more and more guarded and more misunderstood and less appreciated. And that doesn't lead to good team dynamics. It's like I said earlier, people can't do their best job when they're scared about keeping their job when they're not at work. Yeah, bingo, Zabat, man. Too much carelessness confused with malice these days. Yeah. Or just too much lack of understanding. People don't like the word ignorance, so I'm careful. I thought it was ignorant. When I was growing up, it was always, boy, you ignorant. And maybe it sounds better when you leave out the or in the middle. Ignorant. And that just means you gotta learn. Like, there's things you gotta learn about this. It wasn't you're deliberately ignorant, but people have said to me they think that ignorant implies an element of deliberateness. And this is the thing, you gotta be careful that the words you're using mean the same thing to the person you're using it, which is why I try not to use buzzwords as much as I can. I try to either self-define terms or, at the beginning of something, say, hey, this is what it means, this episode. Especially with gaming, somebody in the chat just said, yeah, English isn't my first language. That's something we have to recognize as well, that we cannot expect nuanced understanding of it isn't even English. It's like, even English has become something of a patois nowadays. We pepper it with words like waifu and stuff like that. Somebody who, the thing about waifu, it's the same in every language, right? But we really have to be more understanding of that, because with the whole freaking out that went on a couple years back, a lot of people I talked to who really got piled on. English isn't their first language, and these poor fuckers from places like Chile and parts of the former Soviet Union and people who I'm amazed at how good your English is. Your English is way better than my Czech, and there's an element to that I find extremely entitled. You don't come from my country. You weren't born in an English-speaking household. I expect you to be just as proficient in my language as I am. Fuck off. Right? Seriously. Funny, Krogan Char. Because I took French all through high school, I've maintained it by watching French kid shows. For a while there, you could only watch Fraggle Rock in French. And it's funny to me that Ananas from Télé Français has become a meme now. It's that creepy looking pineapple you see on the internet. That's Ananas. He's from a French-Canadian television show that is delightfully weird. I pulled up an episode on YouTube to show my husband, because he'd never seen it. And I'm like, this is crazy creative, this show. It was really cool. Language, as Toxkill said, your first language does shape how you perceive words, even in other languages. Yeah, because the structure of language is very different. Don't all Canadians have to take French in school? Yeah. Oh boy. The farther away you get from Quebec, the worse the French language education gets. I knew kids who moved from BC to Ontario, and they were way behind grade level French in when they got here. It really sucked for them. They actually had to do remedial because they just they didn't have it. You're more likely to encounter Chinese, like Cantonese, in BC than you are French. It's just so far away from the French part of the country. And yeah, we'll wrap Gilgamesh. That's a good idea. People started firing questions with me. So we'll wrap there. Télé Français. And I'm going to now shove something down my throat that stops it from hurting. Thanks, guys. We have let's do an update on the Kickstarter before we go. We are over 28,000, which is awesome. We're at $28,354. We have 594 backers and 16 hours to go as of this airing. 16 hours to go. So this is exciting. I really kind of want to hit 666. for the number of backers. That's like more important. If we hit the 4K, that'll be awesome. But I think it's great anyway. But please spread the word, share, please. The link is in the description box. If you can just give it a share to your networks, let people know we are on the last day. That really helps because some people see it and forget about it, or some people are just finding it out for the first time now. So if you can, greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. This is fun again. I will try to be back Friday, depending on my throat. And then the live sessions start. We'll do the surveys next week, and then the live sessions will hit the ground running after that. But we may do a merchandise. Maybe next Wednesday will be merchandise stuff, like swag stuff, designs and stuff. Okay? Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.